our job is to make sure that they're being found for the keywords that are most important to them. It drives valuable traffic to their website, and that turns into generally an inquiry that comes through a telephone call, an email click, a form submission.
Maybe an interesting question for you is,
Yep.
What are the drawbacks of subscription-based selling?
One of the main drawbacks is if you end up having a few large clients that are a big portion of your income, if then one of those businesses decides to stop that service, it can have quite an instant effect on your own business. When we're talking to small businesses about our services and how we can help them with SEO and Google Ads, the thing that I drive home a lot is all about what's realistic.
Hi everyone, you're listening to the Unrelenting Drive podcast, and before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to let you know I started this podcast because over the years I've had hundreds of the most inspiring conversations of my life with small business owners, and they really helped me grow and scale my own business and get my mindset right even when times were really tough. I wanted to capture those conversations and make them available to other small business owners who are following in my footsteps, and I've just got a small request. If you enjoy this episode, if you find it really inspiring, if you find it helps you in your own business, then please just like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The more subscribers we get, the more we can invest in making the podcast better. So enjoy the episode. Hi everyone, you are watching the Unrelenting Drive podcast, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Chris Anderson from Springhill Marketing. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. If you could just briefly explain to the audience what you do.
Okay, so Springhill Marketing is an SEO and Google Ads agency. Our specialty is bringing in traffic to websites. So it's search traffic. So everyone knows how Google works, and everyone knows from many years' experience using Google now that there's two kind of main areas on Google. You get the sponsored ads right at the top, and then you get what we call the organic results that are in between the ads right at the top and the bottom. Our job is to make sure that our clients are found on Google for the keywords and the searches that mean the most to their business. So obviously that's the different searches, different keywords for each business, and actually they want to be positioned in different places within the Google results pages for depending on who they are and who the business is. So get the adverts right at the top, and then you also get people also ask section, and then you have the map, and then you have the organic and all sorts. So our job is to make sure that they're being found for the keywords that are most important to them. It drives valuable traffic to their website, and that turns into generally an inquiry that comes through a telephone call, an email click, a form submission, or a sale if it's e-commerce.
That's amazing. And just if we could briefly cover, how did you actually get into running your own business? What did you do after you left education, and tell us about your journey?
Okay, so I first started off as a graphic designer, so still within the marketing space, but on the design side. I started work at a kind of mid-sized marketing and design agency as a junior graphic designer, slowly worked my way up, moved across to a smaller agency and became the senior graphic designer there. Then I left that company, so probably at this point, maybe 5 or 6 years into my career. So quite early on, I was quite young when I first started business. And the new business, my own business, was a single person, one-man band design company, because that was my skill set. I had experience when I was working within other agencies. My experience was within quite large, well-known brands, such as Bentley and Honda, Tesco, Asda, and companies like that, Discovery and what have you. But then I started my own business from the ground upwards. We were never going to shoot for those types of businesses from word go. I was aiming and targeting for local businesses. So started that off. It was just me in my bedroom, as these things are generally. Then I decided to get an office, decided to take on people and employees, took on a few designers over the years and grew that business up to around 10 people. And we kind of went from a design-only company to, over that 10-year period, to more of a full-service marketing agency.
What was that business called?
Toxic Creative.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting name, isn't it? I've got definitely a past history of choosing quite strange business names. I've sorted that out.
Gets
now.
your attention.
As I've matured, the names have got better. So that was my first business, and we ended up being quite a full service marketing agency. So my expertise originally was on the graphic design side of things, but as we started to work with more and more small businesses, they needed more and more kind of a full service approach to how we did things. So going from doing just graphic design, which would cover logos, branding, signage, website design and things like that, we started to do more and more, and including things like marketing strategy, search engine optimization, SEO, Google Ads, full gamut of marketing solutions. And then in the end, we ended up spreading ourselves quite thin. We were trying to do everything for everybody. We weren't niched down either, so we would work for any type of industry, any type of business locally. But it became too much. It was definitely spreading ourselves too thin, like I say. And what I really wanted to do was go into the area that I had the most interest in, and also the area of business where we were getting the best results. So we were a really good design agency, I would say, and I definitely think we were working to a high standard. But all of the work that we were getting the best feedback from was the marketing solutions, SEO and Google Ads, because it was that was driving traffic to our clients' websites, and it was leading to the inquiries and their business growth and sales and things like that. So I wanted to focus on that because that's what businesses were telling us they really needed. But the other reason I wanted to go over to SEO and Google Ads was that with the old business, it was very much project-based. So every single month, I had to generate enough work to feed and look after and grow a team of 10 people. Whereas the traffic business, search engine optimization and Google Ads, that was a recurring revenue model. So we had to retain clients instead of bring in new projects every single month. So I definitely was attracted to that side of things. Plus also we were getting the good results on that side of things as well. So yeah, I decided to bite the bullet, go in that direction, build the team up from scratch, because we were no longer doing design, weren't doing development and things like that. So I had to bring in new team members. And it was at that point also my family was growing, so I decided to move away from having a studio in Northampton town, decided to work from home. My family went from having one child to 3 children over quite a small period, so being at home was beneficial to me and the family. So because of what we were doing was a lot more digital, I was able to then start hiring people anywhere around the world to when I was building up the team, rather than just having to hire from the local talent pool. So started to build that company.
How did you extract yourself from like Toxic Creative in terms of because you had 10 members of staff then?
Yeah.
Or sorry, 9 plus you. What happened to them? Was it like an overnight thing, or did you do it gradually?
Yeah, it was overnight. The business ultimately failed. It was a situation where I wanted to go into a new direction, but that business had come to the end of its life anyway.
So Springhill Marketing, which is your current business, that's did you manage to get some of your old clients from Toxic Creative to come with you?
Yeah, we had a really good relationship with our clients. We were already doing SEO and Google Ads with them. So yeah, thankfully we took a fair amount of clients directly from that business.
Did you, everything you're saying here is, have you ever read that book or listened to it, Built to Sell?
Yes.
And it's
Big
really,
fan of that book.
Yeah, it's really cool because it's about that guy, Alex Stapleton. I know it's fictional because John Warlow, the author, he essentially, I think he sold 3 businesses, and then the actual story of those businesses he couldn't divulge because as part of the sale agreement, he wasn't allowed to talk specifically about those businesses. But Built to Sell, he creates the story of Alex Stapleton, who's got this kind of the agency you're kind of describing. They do a little bit of everything, but he's being pulled in so many directions. They got all this bespoke work going on. He's got to continuously resell stuff. They've got some tiny clients and some gigantic clients, always with the cash flow issues as well, because the big clients really throw their weight around with the payment terms. And then the story of how he focuses all of that into just selling logos and having a business that just purely focuses on logo design, and it's quite impressive. I think it's an oversimplification of.
It is, but also it's very much the story of what I've done with my business. I really like the idea of having recurring revenue and being able to have retained clients for us to work on campaigns and help them over time. I had a lot of satisfaction from doing projects on the design side of things, which you don't quite get so much with what we're doing. But nowadays, our satisfaction comes from actual results and actual being able to grow businesses.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. In my webinar, what is your business really worth? I talk about the hierarchy of sales. Not all sales are equal, not all profit is equal. Because a profit is profit, but then actually what it means to the value of your business, if you want to resell it, generating profit in one way can lead to your business having very different value to generating it in a different way. The bottom rung is where you've got transactions and you're offering people payment terms, and the top end you've got subscriptions where there's some sort of sunk costs because they've got to pay a setup fee at the beginning or buy some kind of equipment, and then a tie-in, they've got to do it for at least a minimum period of time. And I guess you've kind of gone, you probably shifted from the bottom end of the income to the top end. And everyone talks about the benefits of subscription-based stuff. So maybe an interesting question for you is, what are the drawbacks of subscription-based selling?
I think one of the main drawbacks is if you end up having a few large clients that are a big portion of your income, if then one of those businesses decides to stop that service, it can have quite an instant effect on your own business. It's the same. You could say that for most businesses if you have a large contract with somebody, but obviously ours is recurring. So if we're expecting to keep a client, and we work with most of our clients for years rather than months, but something changes, we don't end up working with that client moving forward, then that can have quite an impact into our business. So we always need to make sure that we're moving forward and we're bringing in new leads, we're taking on clients. So we don't really have much of a churn within our business, which is good, but then you start relying on those clients and those retainers. So
it's interesting you say that, because in that webinar, what is business really worth? We talk about the 6 factors that determine the value of your business, and number 3 is essentially the quality of your income, but which in terms of subscriptions or transactions. But then number 6 I use, and that's essentially the sales risk. How much of your business is coming from 1 or 2 big clients, and actually having 1 or 2 big clients, that really devalues your business if someone's looking to buy it, because they're thinking, hey, what are the chances those big clients are there because of a personal relationship with the owner who's about to leave? So we do raise that awareness with our clients and businesses we talk to, but I guess, I think one other drawback of having subscription-based income, by the way, when I say drawback, I mean a minor drawback, but a consideration, because generally subscription-based services are incredibly good for the health of a business. And also, like John Warlow, who wrote Built to Sell, he also wrote another book called The Automatic Customer. And, certain industries, it is very obvious how you can turn them into a subscription-based model. But what's interesting about this book is he talks about the industries where it's not as obvious, and talks about opportunities to turn those into subscription-based businesses. I think, and really the book it talks about how it applies to pretty much every industry, the idea of subscriptions. But I do think one challenge when you're trying to get people on subscriptions is the threshold for getting them over the line as a sale is harder.
Yeah.
Because when you're doing transactional work, especially if it's at a lower level, like, you know, there's less risk for the customer, and in sometimes they can just buy from you as a one-off just to test you out anyway. Yeah. But then I guess the other challenge there is then getting them to come back. But with the subscriptions, like, you know, people know that they're building that long-term relationship with you. So actually, the credibility threshold at the beginning needs to be higher, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You make a really good point. You need to have your marketing in good shape. You need to have a good reputation. You need to be able to have provable results. If you can put all of those things together, it's possible to then bring on retainers, long-term retainers. But for us, effectively, it's all about actually delivering the results. So it's all very well being able to show past project successes and things like that. But if you struggle with a retainer or a project or a client, they're not going to stay with you. So, and I think that's really healthy for us. We're absolutely obsessed about producing the results, because that's how our business is run, how it keeps going, and how the retention is.
Do you remember to shout about the wins?
We're probably not as good at marketing our own business as we do for other people. There's plenty more that we can do. We have case studies and things like that. We could shout more about it, that's for sure. I guess every company could say the same.
I mean, I guess the saying, a workman's house is never finished, and it's the same for. I mean, although our accounting's okay, but you know, when you work in the marketing field, I guess you're always spotting opportunities for yourself.
Yeah, I think our marketing's in good shape. It's just the list of things and ideas that we want to do. It's never ending. We were having this conversation just the other day. You know, the opportunities out there for marketing, especially digitally at the moment, it's almost endless, and so much of it are, you know, such great ideas with such potential. But the thing I always say about marketing is that you have to commit to fewer things. You have to really commit to it and go through the whole process before you can come out the other side and say, okay, well, that was a huge success or it was a failure for any reason. I think the thing that I see happen all the time, especially with small businesses, is that they hear about all the different marketing channels, marketing options, and they're kind of drowning in all of these options. And they know they need to be on social media. They know they need to be found when people are searching for their services online. They know they need to be, or they have the opportunity to be doing things like this podcast and lots of different options. And they try to do everything. And generally, most small businesses have a limited budget, a limited amount of time. So they end up doing all of those things at a low level. Nothing really gives them the results that they need. So I think for us, when we're talking to small businesses about our services and how we can help them with SEO and Google Ads, the thing that I drive home a lot is all about what's realistic and how what's required to get the results that they are looking for. Within our business, we're not really sales led. I don't just want more and more clients and expect them just to leave after a few months. It's not how we run things. And I know a lot of our kind of national competitors can run a little bit like that. But for us, we work with less clients, but we're looking to retain them and to be able to go through the journey with them as they grow and keep working with them. So at the very beginning of the process, once we've spoken to a potential client, we take as much information as we possibly can. We do all the groundwork. We're looking at how they're performing currently online. We look at the competition, and we do a gap analysis. We look at where they are versus where they want to be. We look at the competition, and then we can map out what it's going to take for them to reach the goals that they want to gain. And effectively, after that process, they've got a starting point of a blueprint, effectively, of what we would need to do. Then it's their choice whether they work with us or not. We spend a lot of time on that, and a lot of people would possibly think that we're putting too much time into that process. But within our world, especially on the SEO side of things, it can be seen as a bit of a black art. and it's very technical, and there's a lot involved with it. So we want to give as much information as possible. We want to show our clients why we need to do what we need to do, rather than just say to them, this is how much it's going to cost and this is how long it's going to cost. Some clients are really interested in knowing all the data, and you definitely are. When we talk about these kind of things, you want to know the nuts and bolts of it, and you're interested in marketing and reasonably technical person. But then there's other people who they want to hear it because they need to know that we know our stuff, and they want to be able to build that trust with us. But then from that point onwards, it's kind of just down to us. When we're working with them, they just let us go and get on with it.
One thing I've always believed, and I think, you just kind of touched on it there, is like, you've got to delegate in business, because I've had this conversation with a lot of business owners in the past, and a lot of coaches out there, I'm not saying they're not doing the right thing or anything, but a lot of coaches will take the route that, the business owner needs to change to get the progress they want. But I've always believed like a business owner is who they are and who they'll always be. And they will obviously adapt and develop in terms of mindset in certain ways. But in terms of like their ability to utilize their time, their ability to do various things in business, I think to some extent, like, where a lot of coaches will say, you've got to find time, you've got to change all these things. I've always believed like, make a reasonable effort to do that, but then after a while, go down understand that actually whatever you can't do does need to be delegated. Yeah. So you mentioned that I've always, because we worked together on SEO in the past, and I am interested in the numbers, but obviously because I make it my mission in my business to understand everything we're involved in. I don't have to be as good as you on the SEO, but I have to, even if we're outsourcing something, I work hard to do my homework on it so I can actually hold a conversation and ask the right questions. And I think that's always been really important. But I guess, if you do something where business owners can't really do it themselves, in the sense that they can write a blog and they can write an article, but there's an element of the really technical aspects which just relies on you probably having to build a certain knowledge base. And actually Google has so many algorithm updates. Like, would you say, like, how much of your time really goes into just keeping up to date with all of it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We are innovating and changing our approach to SEO and Google Ads constantly. We've got at least 600 standing operating procedures that say what we do, when we do it, why we do it, what the next step is. And a lot of those are quite long SOPs. It's really, really technical, and we're constantly updating, amending, creating new SOPs. And that's not just because of things changing with Google. That's probably 50% of it. The other 50% of it is just us constantly improving what we're doing. The whole company is responsible for developing those SOPs. So day one, it was me, and every time that I found I was doing something that would be a repetitive task, I then wrote it down as an instruction for somebody else to do it. And then that slowly grew. We've got an operations manager, and her responsibility, part of her responsibility, is standing operating procedures. So she oversees all of the SOPs, but there's so much going on and so much changing. The responsibility for certain areas of the business and how we do it and innovating and make things better comes down to the people who are actually doing it. So we encourage them to always be learning and go on courses and find out what other people are doing and ask questions out and about, and identify where areas could be more efficient, and then come to us with their recommendations. So all team members at every single level within the business will draft an SOP, and then it goes to the operations manager, who reviews it and kind of fact checks things and proofreads it and writes it or rewrites it in an appropriate way that's not ambiguous and very instructive and things like that, following the guide. We have an SOP on writing SOPs. And then finally that gets published, and I oversee everything that changes on that side of things. But
so
it's constant.
Out of those 600 SOPs, what proportion of them are really linked to getting a result on Google, and what proportion are linked to running your business?
So I would say probably 60%, possibly even 70% is just for SEO. And
so you talk about 360, 420 SOPs just that go into delivering a result in terms of Google.
Easily. I'd probably say easily 400 SOPs on the SEO.
There's like 400 different activities you can do to increase someone's Google ranking.
And each one of those SOPs might have 20 steps in it.
Can you give us a couple of examples?
So SEO is split up into two major sections. We have on-site SEO and off-site SEO. On-site SEO is everything that happens on the website, and then off-site SEO is everything that happens away from the website. If you took one step further into on-site SEO, then you would have what's happening on a particular page, on-page SEO, and then you have the technical SEO, so things that are happening across the board of the website, the technical setup of things, the structure of the website, and things like that. And you can just go a step further, a step further, and a step further. So on-page SEO, that would be split up into different things. So you have how the content is split up into different tags. So you have header 1 tag and header 2, and then paragraphs, and then you have internal links within that. Then you have metadata, meta titles, meta descriptions. It just goes on and on and on. So you can't do what we do without that level of understanding, that much structure within it.
So one of your SOPs might be check meta descriptions.
Yeah, so one of the most straightforward would be, let's say we have an SOP for a meta title. The meta title is something that is shown within your Google results. So let's say somebody searched for your business, and they were searching for Northampton accountants. You'd have all of the listings of you and your competitors. What you can see within that listing is split up into different parts, but the two major parts are the title and a description. The title is your meta title, and that is within the code of the page that it's being shown. Again, there's nuance in this because Google actually often rewrites these titles. But as a starting point, you want to tell Google what the major topics are, the subjects are for that page, and that's where you have it in the title. Plus also you need it to be something that will encourage somebody to click through. And you need to make sure that it covers the keywords that you're interested to be found with. And it just goes on and on and on. It never ends.
So, I mean, I'm going to guess that most business owners have heard of Google, but do they really understand SEO?
I think people struggle with understanding what needs to be done, and I think a little bit of knowledge can be quite dangerous from a business perspective, because generally business owners that I speak to know that being on Google's important for them, but they also know that guaranteeing always being in that number one position or on the first page is very difficult, and they always put that down to Google's changing the goalposts. The reality is that Google does change the goalposts, and it does evolve how search engine optimization needs to work, but it's not the changing of the goalposts that makes it difficult. It's actually the competition that you're up against. So if your website isn't currently showing on Google, and let's say you're on page 3, there's a fair amount of work that needs to be done to get you from page 3 to page 2 to finally page 1, and then move up the ranks into the top few positions. So a lot of business owners will discount SEO with the thought that, well, if we spend money on this, tomorrow Google's going to change the plan and move the goalposts, and then suddenly that investment will be a waste. But that's not really what happens. Google does change its algorithm, but there are tweaks here and there. It's got a very sophisticated algorithm now, so it's making tweaks here and there. And as long as you're doing the right things and you're not trying to cheat Google or beat Google, and you actually want to play along by Google's rules, you are going to have long results and good results over time. You're not suddenly going to get knocked off of Google. It's when you try to beat the system and find loopholes that you might get some short success, but not long success.
So, I mean, I've been aware of this for a long time, but your nightmare must be the customers that just want overnight results, right?
Yeah. So we have to have that conversation really early on. I think the majority of companies that we speak to have enough knowledge now that they're not expecting overnight results. I'm the person they speak to during the sales journey. So I really lay it in thick and make it really clear that results don't happen overnight. And something that separates us from the competition, I believe, is that we're actually really good at predicting how long it will take to get results for a client. So we'll almost always give an estimation of how long it will take to get a particular goal.
How do you estimate that?
So it's a matter of, it's quite a long-winded process. It's a matter of understanding what they want to achieve, looking at the websites that are already achieving it, doing a gap analysis, and then figuring out, well, if we need to have this, we need to have this factor, and this factor that at least matches these main competitors. What's it going to take for us to get those factors in place? And we just list it all out, and we can see the volume of each one of these that we need to do. We know how much work and how long it takes and how many hours it takes for each one of those things. And then we can say, okay, well, it's that many hours, so it's going to, at this budget, it's going to take us this long to get it. And we're really accurate at that nowadays.
And can I just assume that there's always a way to win, right? It just depends on the cost.
Yeah. Sometimes, and very, very occasionally, you're in a situation where it wouldn't be a good idea for them to try to go up against that particular industry or that particular website, and we'll always be really open and honest about that.
So what's the alternative to that? Do they like some form of niching?
Yeah, so there's generally a way about it. So let's say a client is only interested in the very broad, the very obvious keyword, and we can see that, well, that would require a huge budget over a long time, but your goal is to get results and get this amount of inquiries or this amount of traffic within this amount of time. So your budget doesn't stretch for that strategy. So let's look at these keywords, long tail keywords that are kind of searched less but are more specific to what that company actually provides. So and again, there's not always those solutions for every client, but we will look and try to figure out what's going to be best to meet their goals and expectations.
I guess I started this business when I was working from home. Then eventually we got an office and then moved along the corridor to bigger offices. And now, if I want to work on the business, I'll tell the team I'm just going to work from home, but I can't really work from home because my wife works from home. So then I go to the gym and work from the cafe there. But for me, if I want to step out of the business so I can work on the business, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I can literally step out of the business. How do you do that when you're working from home?
This is essential for me, Nishi. I've got a lock on the door.
Okay.
And I do lock that door constantly. And my kids know. So we're in the summer holidays at the moment. So kids are at home. They're very well trained now. They know that if the door is shut, and especially if it's locked, then I'm probably on a call. So the assumption is they can't come in and they'll leave me alone.
But that's, I guess that's protecting you from being interrupted. But how do you separate like working on the operations in your business to actually working on the strategic things that you need to do to grow your business?
There's definite things that I do. The first thing is I block out time for certain tasks. And for instance, on a Monday, I won't have client calls, I won't have team calls either. So that gives me a little bit of time to work on the business. I've got business planning, business development scheduled into the calendar for those times. But then there's the odd occasion, similar to yourself, where I need a new environment, and I just go to a coffee shop or I go and work somewhere. Generally a coffee shop, but just that change of environment gets me out, makes me think in a completely different way. It really breaks things up.
One thing I quite like doing, if I've got a set amount of time to get something done, or I want to give myself a set amount of time to get something done, I'll leave like my charger for my laptop like in my car or in the office, and then I'll just get my laptop out and I'll say, okay, I've got to get this work done before the battery runs out. And although laptop batteries are getting longer now, but that's something I do actually.
So for us, the majority of what we do is highly technical, and people who want to be within technical industries tend to want to sit in a room on their own and have full focus on the thing that they're doing. So you tend to find that with programmers and developers as well. They generally won't want to go into an office. So the people who are within our team who are working on those kinds of things, we have content writers and we have technical SEO specialists as well. They're doing a lot of quite technical work where if they had the hubbub of an office behind them, people coming in and out and asking questions and looking over their shoulders and things like that, they'd find it quite distractive. We've even found that our digital communication with the team sometimes can be too distracting to those team members as well. So we've kind of had to manage that. They've all got a lot of work to do and they need to get it done, and it needs to be right and within a certain deadline for a particular project and client and things like that. So I think for our industry and how we've set this business up, it works really, really well. If we were doing something else, for instance, if I was still involved with design, I think it would be difficult to always do all of the design process digitally online. I think you get a lot from being able to sit next to somebody and do a sketch and say, how about move this over there? But what we're doing is a lot more technical, and so we use a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of data and things like that.
I think you mentioned Trello to me. Is that right? Or
no, well, we use Asana.
Asana, that's it.
Yeah.
And is that the collaborative tool you use to like communicate with each other? And
yeah, so we use Asana and we use Slack. We're going through the process at the moment of trying to use Asana more rather than a lot of
Asana's project management, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. It's project management. So we've over the years, well, not that many years, I think maybe 18 months, 2 years, have developed our approach of using Asana so it perfectly matches what we do. Before that, we were using Google Sheets. And again, we had very well-developed approach to using these sheets, and we've had to work actually quite hard to get something like Asana to work well for us. But we're in a position now where it does everything that we want, plus also the best thing about it is that we can have communication at a task level. So each project would probably have easily maybe a couple of hundred tasks and then subtasks within those. So if somebody's working on a particular thing, we can go into that particular task. We can see what they've done previously, how much time they've spent. We can see the files that are related to that task, and we can ask questions, and we can change the priority and things like that. So we were doing all of that on Google Sheets. But the one thing that Google Sheets wasn't able to do overly well for us was have that communication. So we'd have like notes written in cells, and as soon as it got a bit complex, nightmare. So yeah, Asana's really helped with that.
Okay, that's really cool. I guess some questions I just want to ask about your view of business and how you educate yourself in terms of business. Like, have you read quite a few business books over the years?
Yeah, I love business books. I don't tend to do a lot of direct reading. I do audio books. So I've got a subscription with Audible, and I'm always listening to a new book.
What do you think? Maybe like the 2 or 3 the most valuable ones you've read for you were.
They're probably going to be the few that are at the top of the list for lots of other companies, but my absolute favourite is E-Myth Revisited.
Yeah, excellent. Michael E. Gerber, I think, or Gerber, I don't know.
It was one of the first books that I read. It was recommended to me by a business coach.
Yeah.
And before that point, I don't think I'd read any or many business books. But
I think it was the first business book I read, actually. Because the business coaches tend to recommend it.
Yeah, they really do. And I went through the process of, at least for the first 5 years, since I read the book for the first time, re-listening to it every single year. And then kind of, considering how I'd moved on from the process and where I was at within that process. The E-Myth, of course, is hugely about systemizing your business. There's parts in there that won't suit all businesses, but the part that really rung true for me was the systemization. I've mentioned the standing operating procedures and how we do things. There's so many moving parts within our business. Having those systems in place and the checklists and things like that, it's just been absolutely essential. So yeah, fantastic book.
One of the things I really like about the E-Myth as well is it doesn't just talk about systemization in general. It really focuses on how you can systemize customer service.
Yeah.
And I love the example in the book that he uses of that hotel he went to. Yeah, where they figure out what his favorite newspaper is and bring that along. They pretty much get the service perfect. Yeah. But then it talks about the consistency element as well. He goes back year after year and it's exactly the same. Yeah. And then I think the other lesson I really got from the E-Myth is about the PowerPoint selling process.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that's quite interesting. Before I read the E-Myth, and to be fair, shortly after, because I'm a slow learner. I know I've said it a million times, but it takes me a lot of time to reflect on something and then adopt it. But then when we do adopt it, it sticks. But the PowerPoint selling process, before we were just trying to sell in that one meeting, whereas, the PowerPoint selling process talks about, split your sales process out into several meetings. Yeah. Don't force all the information on them all in one go. Don't try and expect them to make a decision all in one go. It talks about the power of the follow-up. And I think that, and since reading that book, I've worked with so many organizations, especially the larger ones, where I just recognize that process in it. Book in the discovery call, but then have a quick touch point before the discovery call, touch point after, and then book in your sales meeting, and then have a touch point before and touch point after, and then book in your proposal presentation meeting, and then have the touch points before and after, and then the follow-up. But I think that was a really good takeaway point for me for the E-Myth, in my opinion.
Yeah, we take very similar process. We probably could do more of the touch points, but in terms of how we split out that sales process, that's very much how we do it.
What other business books do you really like?
So Built to Sell, the one you mentioned, is a favourite of mine. Very similar, I think. Also, currently I'm reading, what's it called? Oversubscribed. I'm about halfway through that at the moment, but a kind of marketing related book. That's quite good.
Is that about just having too many customers?
Yeah, the idea is getting your marketing and sales process in place so that you're oversubscribed for it, and your audience can see that if they don't get involved, then they might be missing out on something. Adding scarcity, basically.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Yeah, it's really good. I think the crux of it really, and I'm only kind of halfway through, but I think the crux of it really is about taking a campaign approach. Testing the market initially to find out what the interest might be, and then following up with those people who have shown some interest and say, well, you can kind of get early bird access to this event or this thing or whatever it might be, and tell them that we've had a lot of interest in it, and start to sign people up, and then get to a point where you have to then turn people away.
You know what? Do you think that still works in this day and age? Because I called up BT because our internet was too slow and we need another line because, now we've got a marketing team. They're always uploading and downloading. And then we had a load of accountants complaining about the slow internet because of the marketing team uploading and downloading stuff all day. So I called up BT and they were talking about, oh, you know what, you don't need another line. You get lease a line and pay £300 a month, and it didn't make any sense. And they really weren't listening to me. And I kind of felt I was being upsold to.
Right.
But I don't know if I can necessarily relate to business owners that haven't been through the same level of sales training, but sometimes I do know when people are artificially creating scarcity.
Yeah.
Like one thing I always ask is when someone says, "Hey, you got to sign on before this date because the price is going up," and I'm like, "Why is the price going up?
Yeah.
What is fundamentally changing in your business model between now and then?"
Within this strategy, by the sounds of it, like I say, I'm only halfway through, but it wasn't an artificial approach to it. It was being able to get feedback on those people who showed some interest, so a micro commitment to actually, yes, I would be interested in this type of event, and then going back to those people and saying, well, actually, we've had a lot of response to it, and no lies with that, and then finally getting people to sign up based on that, and but also at the same time, I believe the idea is that if you don't get that initial interest in it, then you decide, well, we're not going to do it. So it's the absolute opposite of spending a lot of time putting a campaign together or an event together, and then spend all the money and all of the planning, and then try to sell these tickets or try to get adoption, then to find that actually, it was difficult to bring people over the line. So that's the idea really, rather than trying to artificially put scarcity into place, I think.
Okay, yeah, makes sense, definitely. And Chris, because you mentioned the E-Myth Revisited, it was recommended to you by a coach. You've had coaching in the past, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
How long have you done it for? What did you, what were your key takeaway points? How did it, so many questions actually. Let's go that.
So I first had a coach possibly about 8-9 years ago. And it was a really good experience. There was a lot involved within that coaching that I didn't know existed. I had a lot of learning to do back then. Still have loads of learning to do now, of course, but a lot of it was new to me. And I think the initial process of doing almost like a business audit right at the beginning of it really helped me. So in a similar way that you do your quarterly planning, where you're considering the major areas of your business and then splitting that out into sections, and then answering questions in terms of how well you perform or how well you think your business performs in particular areas, and then simply taking those and prioritizing them for the beginning of your business building process. So I think I was surprised about what I could see within the results of that initial audit, and then I could see the structure of what we were going to work on over the next period. So it was very collaborative, and I learned a lot really, and it gave me a plan really, which was the most important thing. Whereas I think a lot of small businesses fall down the trap of just doing the do and just being busy on a day, and I still struggle with that at times, but having a business plan, knowing where you're going, committing to it, having accountability for that, which of course a coach provides, I think was absolutely essential.
And how do you think your mindset has changed since you've been coaching?
I'm not sure if it's necessarily due to the coaching that I had, but I guess I've been doing business for 17, 18 years. And at first, or in the first, maybe 5-10 years, the struggles that came along, affected me. You know, it really kind of hit home when something didn't go right. I think I've become very grey in that period, and now I kind of take it all a little bit more of a pinch of salt. I realise there's things that work out and things that don't work out. So I'm a very positive person, and I think that helps. But yeah, I try not to allow the emotion to become something too big when it's business. At the end of the day, it's just business.
Why do you believe positivity is important in business?
Maybe it depends on the type of person that you are. I personally like positivity. I don't think you're going to make good, strong, at times risky decisions unless you have a bit of positivity in front of you. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm completely an optimist. I definitely have some pessimism in me, but I think in my day-to-day I'm very positive. I think that's important. We've got a team of 14 people. They're not going to perform well if there's a lot of negativity coming from the top. And yeah, we work as a team. We have project teams, so we have to have positivity between us, and we have to be able to communicate well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I did a video probably a couple of months ago, and it was about, you know, where business owners go wrong in decision making, and essentially there's a lot of business owners out there who are so pessimistic. They'll always look at the worst case scenario on everything, and the problem with looking at the worst case scenario is you'll never say yes to a decision. But then there's other business owners where they will look at the best case scenario, and the problem with the best case scenario is you'll always overreach and then end up with the logistical nightmare that it creates. You know, good quality decisions are based off realism, really, and the realism. I guess, in my opinion, the best business book, which I'll tell you about in a second, but also you did touch upon the quarterly planning, and you know, there's a good book but slightly boring by Gino Wickman called Traction, and if you can make it all the way through,
I like Traction.
I struggled with it a bit, but it makes some very good points. And it talks about the importance of the quarterly planning cycle, and that's really important. But going back to this, like, you know, the realism element, and I was having this conversation with Holly as well. Well, I'm trying to say so much stuff, but ultimately the book, the best business book in my opinion that I've ever read is it's called Good to Great by Jim Collins, and this book essentially it has an interview with someone called also Jim Stockdale, and he was an admiral in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War, and he flew a fighter jet mission, essentially. Admirals don't usually climb into a fighter jet, but maybe they're short on pilots. So he flew a mission over Vietnam, got shot down, and it was at the beginning of the war. So he spent 8 years in the Hanoi Hilton, and the Hanoi Hilton is the name they gave the prisoner of war camp that they put all the pilots in North Vietnam. And one of the things this book called Good to Great the author asked Jim Stockdale was essentially, look, how did you make it 8 years in this prisoner of war camp and then finally get released when so many people around you died? And he said it was always the optimists that would die, because they'd end up in the prisoner of war camp, and they'd say we'll be out by December. Then December came, they said we'll be out by Easter, and then Easter came, and then they said we'll be out by summer, and then eventually Christmas came all over again, and they weren't out, and they died of a broken heart. And I think it links in quite well to and actually there was an interview with Churchill as well, and I was talking about this with Holly, who's a member of our team, yesterday, because Holly pointed out, you know, Churchill did have mental health issues, obviously, like the pressure on him, all that, and this book touched upon how he dealt with those mental health issues. And you know, Churchill said, look, I created a special department just to give me statistics, and even in the darkest days of the war, they would give me numbers, and the numbers weren't always easy to look at. But what they told me was, that there was a realistic possibility of us coming out the other side. And the reason Churchill ended up with those, bits of depression and stuff was when he believed that the war was unwinnable. But it was this department that he created that kept reminding him actually victory was realistic even in the darkest days. And it's quite interesting. So going back to what we're talking about, the positivity, and as long as it's linked to the realism, that's one of the most powerful things a business owner can essentially do, from what I've seen and learned.
You can go either way, can't it? You can be too pessimistic, you can be too optimistic. You can have some kind of a balance, and it depends also what you're tackling, doesn't it? I do think a healthy measure of both, depending on what you're doing, is essential. I totally agree.
So, like, from a business perspective, what keeps you up at night?
I don't think much keeps me up at night anymore. Definitely it has done, or it did previously. Client results, I think, would be the one thing. I don't have sleepless nights anymore, but whenever I have done in previous years, it would be about a project that wasn't working and the concern of that. It's our number one thing within the business, of course. It kind of would go without saying, but I do find a lot of businesses are kind of sales led. We could do with being a little bit more sales led and being focusing more on that side of our business, I'm sure. However, everything that we talk about within business is about getting the results. So yeah, we're always having to innovate, and we're always trying to get the results for our clients. Some projects are easier than others.
Do you feel a lot of the competitors in your industry, they're not as results orientated as you are?
All I can go on is what I see when we take on a campaign from a competitor. So we can see what they've been doing, and we can often see the strategy of what they've been doing. Our clients will share the reports and share the strategies and things like that. I think I don't want to. I need to be careful. I don't want to downplay any competitors, and I'm not necessarily talking about any company or any company local to us. We work with a lot of clients nationally and internationally. So the one thing that I would say is what we see often is not that great, really. I tend to find some of the basic stuff isn't correct. So they're actually they're having the wrong strategy. They're looking at the wrong keywords. They don't have realistic expectations. And that's ultimately why these clients will come to us in the end.
Is that because they haven't done their keyword research properly? Or
I don't know. I don't know what drove them to make the decisions that they did. Maybe they just didn't truly understand what it would take, or they allowed the client to drive them to focus on something that wasn't realistic, and they couldn't tell the client. We're really transparent, really open with our clients, and from the word go, when we're talking to a client, we will be really honest, and sometimes that requires some quite difficult conversations. And I think a lot of salespeople would possibly think that we could be a bit more optimistic. I like to be really conservative in terms of what we're going to achieve for our clients, because we want to have those monthly meetings with the client and be delivering above and beyond what was expected. So I am quite conservative, and I think possibly the biggest failure of other companies within our space would be they're too optimistic in terms of results and not realistic enough.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess, like, they're maybe it's easier to tell someone what they want to hear than to So Chris, if you could maybe describe your company in 5 years' time, how is it going to be different from where you are now?
Ooh, that's a good question. 5 years' time. Well, we are ambitious. We want to grow the company. We want to make sure that where we are in 5 years' time isn't turning into a monster that isn't what it is at the moment. we're interested in growing. We want to work with more companies. We're starting to take on clients internationally. So I think possibly that would be the focus. Keep the growth going how it is, but take on some more national projects in areas that we're most interested in.
And would you say SEO is the same all over the world?
SEO is the same around the world. Where you're located doesn't make a big difference. It's the industry or the sector that you're working in that makes the biggest difference. Ultimately, what we do and what we need to do at any point within the life of a campaign, it's dictated by what the people who are already winning within that space have done. So we have to then go in that same journey. So what it would be within one sector or one industry compared to another can be completely different.
Okay, that makes sense. So I mean that also means your business is infinitely scalable, really. Like there's so many businesses out there that need a Google presence.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's sensible for us to start working with more and more companies that have working within the space that we already have experience with. So that's going to be something that we focus on moving forward. But yeah, it's about taking what we've already learned and being able to deliver it to different businesses.
Okay, absolutely amazing. And we've kind of already touched on it, but if you could give someone starting out in business one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, okay. I'm going to say have a business plan and have a fluid business plan, something that you look at every single week and something that you are updating. So I don't have a business plan in as much that the kind of thing that you would put together to raise finance for a business. Instead, it quite simply lists my goals and projects for the month, and then for the quarter, and then for the year, and then future years. And then every month that goes past, I update and change it depending on what has been done, tick things off the list. So it's very much a fluid plan of what I need to do. And when I am on that and I'm checking it and I'm updating it, that's when the business moves forward. I think it's really easy to get lost being a practitioner and delivering the thing that you're experienced within, rather than working on the business and developing the business. And a business plan and a fluid business plan allows you to do that.
Amazing. And finally, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, so Google Springhill Marketing, you'll find us. And if you don't find us, then we're not doing our job properly.
Okay, amazing. Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been really insightful. And everyone, you've been watching the Unrelenting Drive podcast, so stay tuned for future episodes.